Hey everyone, welcome to the RotoGrinders Morning Grind Podcast. I'm your host, Stevietpfl. It's Tuesday. It is March 17th, and we are here to talk some League of Legends. I know.
Oh, yeah.
I never thought that it'd be the day that you guys would tune into this podcast here at RotoGrinders and start listening to a podcast about esports. But hey, it's the times that we're in, and I'm excited. I'm actually excited to talk some League of Legends. I'm joined today by John George, the esports plug over there on Twitter. I'm sure if you haven't checked him out already, you're going to be checking him out because it's becoming a thing, and we're all degens, and we want something to sweat. So, John, I appreciate you joining me here today, and we're going to talk some league. Is what I heard is like the cool term to pronounce it.
Yeah, that'll work for it. And yeah, thanks for having me on, Stevie. Should be informative for people, I hope.
All right, so we're going to talk basics as far as League of Legends. We have some slates coming up that, I'm excited, man. I'm sure you're excited too, because you actually played this a lot. Like, you have a $60,000 tournament on Wednesday with $20K up top. And it's like, I hate how top heavy it is. I think the tournaments will kind of come down as far as top heaviness here. But like, even if you look at like the 222, I'm sure you're excited as an LOL esports player. Like, oh yeah, this is awesome because now I can take advantage of the fish like Stevie, jumping in on these games.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it's been huge for us. Like the standard slate before all the other sports leagues dropped out, you could maybe invest like 500 or 600 if you max entered everything. If you won everything you played, you might walk away with like $2,500. And now we're looking at, average slate. You can get thousands in there if you want, and you can walk away with 10,000 plus easily if you ran good. So it's been awesome for us.
All right, so before we get into talking league, let's get a little background on you. Me and you were chatting before we got started here. We started talking old Counter-Strike days, and I got excited because I miss playing Counter-Strike, 10 hours a day. That was something that I did, when I was hurt in high school and got really good at it. So, like, I miss doing that. But let's just give a little background on how you got into, League of Legends DFS. I know you like the sports betting aspect of it and everything, too. Just give us a little background on you.
Yeah, man, it's been a crazy ride throughout my life. I started out playing Counter-Strike 1.5 at the LAN cafe when I was like 13. I would, take a train down to the city, and I lived in Australia at that time, and take a train down to the city and play Counter-Strike for like 10 hours, like you're talking about. And I was on the pro tour for Magic the Gathering, another card game that I used to play, and slowly I kind of transitioned from that into poker. Played poker for a living for about 10 years, and then after the online poker ban, moved overseas, came back. My brother was the one, my little brother, who's like 10 years younger than me, showed me League of Legends for the first time. Honestly, the first time I saw it, I was like, it's a stupid game. I'm never going to play it again. And then I saw that it was on DraftKings, and my brother was still involved with it. And I was like, hey, man, what's going on with this? It was like 6 years ago or something, 5 years ago. And started doing it from there, started following all the leagues, started really digging into it in depth. At the beginning, no one really knew what they were doing, so there was a lot of money to be made. And I've just been doing it ever since.
Yeah, I'm already seeing, like, all right, I'm not an expert. I am good at roster construction just because I've been playing DFS for a very long time. But I'm seeing the most important part already of League of Legends DFS is roster construction. Am I crazy?
No, you're definitely correct. It's super important. It's one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they first come in, is constructing rosters incorrectly. And even at the highest levels, like even at the high buy-in tournaments, I see people constructing their rosters wrong all the time.
Yeah, and we don't have to get like too much into that, but I'm just saying, like, I'm already seeing like people game stacking, and that seems like an instant no for me. It's not like we're so used to football, we're game stacking. The game gets high scoring, we're game stacking. Basketball game gets high scoring. Like, game stacks work so much, and like we're already seeing like such a huge difference when it comes to like League of Legends DFS compared to like NBA, and baseball. I messaged you earlier. I feel like baseball is the closest comparable for me because, like, baseball is all about, team stacking, and that seems what League of Legends is.
Yeah, I think one thing that I compare it to a lot of the time is MMA.
Okay.
You can't have losers in your lineup. Like, losers in your lineup is almost certainly going to be bad for you. There have been literally like less than 5 occasions in the last like 4 years or however long it's been that I've played players from the same team or like opposite teams in my lineups. And that's only because there have been a few outlier teams that were like killed and died so often that occasionally you could game stack them if they were playing other really bloody teams, but it's very rare. You definitely want to be stacking like what you were talking about in baseball.
Yeah, so like I've been doing some research on the Wednesday slate, and like I've only seen one time that I've done research so far that like one guy has scored more than like 75 points on the losing team, and like it's almost always like an ADC. So I'm just you're probably not going to win with an ADC from the losing team no matter what, because it seems to be like the mid and ADC become the most important spots.
Yeah, and I mean it is something that DraftKings fixed. Back in the day when you had these slates that were only 2 games, you sometimes had to play players from one of the other teams. Like if you wanted to play both the favorites, you just wouldn't have enough money to play only players from the favorite teams, no matter who you put in your lineup. But these days, you can almost always get lineups that don't include, that are only playing players from teams that could be winning on the slate. Um, as far as like playing a losing player in order to save salary, that's like something that people do sometimes. They want to get a better captain or something. I would not ever recommend doing that. Like you said, losing players almost never have very high scoring games. The game snowballs out of control too much. When one team is winning, the other team basically ceases to get kills most of the time, which completely shuts down their DraftKings scoring.
All right, so let's just talk like general League of Legends here. Like, we know that from like our gaming days, well, my gaming days, that like it's 5-on-5. Um, you know, and I haven't like really got it. Like, are there multiple maps, or is it just like one map, 3 lanes, do your thing?
Yeah, it's just one map. They play the same map over and over again. The thing that changes, like you're referring to Counter-Strike, where they switch maps, and oftentimes like one team will be better on this map than the other team, but they might be worse on a different map. So it's a way for like things to change in the same matchup. And the way that happens in League is via the champion picks. So there's 148 champions in League of Legends, and they all fit within some of the roles. Some of them can play one role, some of them can play 4 roles, 5 roles. But every single game, the drafts end up differently at the beginning of the game when they draft their champions. So while this team might beat that team in this draft setup, next game the draft could be completely different and it might go the other direction. So that's kind of how they switch things up, so you're not getting bored seeing the same exact matchup over and over again.
So you get 2 teams of 5, competing, trying to kill the Nexus. If I'm not crazy, right?
Yep, that's correct.
So we got like, you got your dragons, just kind of give us an overview. First time ever watching LOL, first time ever playing LOL. Just kind of give us a general overview of like how gameplay and like what I might pick up if I'm watching a match.
Okay, so some of the things I'm going to say here are not universally true, but they're going to be very often true. Most teams have 5 positions. They're going to have a top laner. The top laner tends to play tanky, big bruisery guys for the most part, somebody who can take a lot of damage. You have a jungler who roams around the map trying to affect the 3 lanes. So you have a top laner in the top lane. They have a top laner in the top lane. Your jungler tries to come in and make that a 2 versus 1 to give your team an advantage, try to fight the other guy real quick and try to win a 2 versus 1 fight. Your mid laner tends to play like mages, people that deal a lot of damage, but are, have like a big bursty ability that does something. The bottom lane tends to have an 80 carry, as they call it, and a support. The 80 carry is like your guy with a bow and arrow, basically. He shoots from long distance, usually does a lot of damage, but is super easily killed. And the support is there to protect the 80 carry to try to stop them from dying since they're so easy to kill. When the game begins, they take to their 3 separate lanes for the most part. The top laner goes top, mid goes mid, and the bot lane goes down there. And they'll just have like little skirmishes and battles with the enemies from that lane. And then as the game starts to roll forward, the junglers will start trying to affect lanes. Sometimes the mid laner or the top laner will roam around and try to go affect the bottom lane, or the support might roam up and try to help the mid lane. And it's all about trying to gain advantages over the opponent, using those, just trying to win your lanes fairly or to try to affect the lanes to win them through teamwork.
Yeah, you don't typically. So what I'm seeing so far, again, no expert by any means, making that very clear. for what I'm seeing, support usually doesn't score as much. Now, and I say that the dude from JDG LVMAO,
Yeah, live Mao.
this dude's averaging like his assist numbers are insane. And like when they 2-0 teams and stuff, like he puts up some really big numbers. And like what I'm seeing so far is like you really want to focus on the ADC and the mid and kind of build from that, as far as like general DFS terms go.
So I will say that yeah, the AD carry and the mid laner tend to be the highest scoring players on a team. That does change based on patches. Like every other game, League of Legends has patches that change how the game works sometimes. And there have been patches where junglers tended to be the highest scoring player. If it was a really aggressive meta game where there was a lot of fighting early, the jungler is the one who's most likely to be involved in an early fight. But generally speaking, yeah, AD carry and mid are the highest scoring positions. I will say they tend to be the least variant positions as well. Like winning 80 carries are usually going to be the highest scoring player on their team, but that's pretty much true no matter what team you're looking at. Whereas some teams have very good top laners and other teams have mediocre top laners. Some teams have very good supports and other teams have mediocre supports. 80 carries will almost always score well if they're on a winning team, as opposed to some of those other positions which are a bit more variant.
Yeah, so I feel like if you're looking at like the team slot too, like it's a position like you're playing like a team defense or something from like
Yeah.
football.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're wanting that team to win 2-0 from what I've seen, and you kind of want the one that's going to win that's the cheapest.
Yeah, team slot is not very variant at all, and it's almost impossible to predict. I mean, teams that are clearly better than their opponents will probably score a little bit better in the team slot. At the same time, if a team wins too cleanly, the game doesn't go very long and give the team chance to score more points. So the team slot is very unpredictable and not very variant. So I would totally agree with you that whoever your cheapest team that you're rostering that you think can win is, that's probably where you want to go with your team slot. I wouldn't be investing like a lot of money into your team slot if you can help it.
All right, so we're talking general strategy as far as gameplay goes. Let's shift gears a little bit and go more like daily fantasy side of things. We as a daily fantasy industry love stats. We love to look up stats. We love like luckily for me, like I'm looking up some of these stats and I'm looking at like kill to death ratio and like I know what this stuff is and I'm like, all right, these really bring me back to like my ESCA days. What kind of stats should we be looking at to, kind of compare, when we're looking at these matchups?
So there's a couple stats that I use a lot that are very easy that people can get a hold of and have a look at. But the problem is, like, one of them is not a stat that's tracked. So this is something for people that want to go out and do their own research to figure this out.
Okay, awesome.
Uh, some of the stats that I use very regularly are stats called kill per win and death per loss, because there are websites that track like basically how bloody a team is overall, but they use a stat called combined kills per minute. And the problem with combined kills per minute is it tells you how often both teams are dying within a specific amount of time. Where what you really need to know is how often this specific team is killing their opponents, not how often both teams are dying. You need to know how many kills this team is going to get. And so a stat that I use is kills per win. I go through the game histories myself and look at every match and record how many kills the winning team got and how many deaths the losing team gave up, which is going to be the same number, and keep track overall of which teams kill the most when they win and which ones die the most when they lose. Because you don't care how often a team dies when they win, and you don't care how often a team kills when they're losing. You only want winning teams on your lineup, so you really care how much they're getting killed or how many kills they're getting when they win. You don't care what they do when they lose.
Hey, I
Um,
like it. I like it.
there is one other stat I would mention that is easily tracked that's important. We were talking about how, like I said, some teams have really good top laners and some teams have really bad top laners, etc. There's a stat called kill participation. You can look it up pretty easily. It just tells you what percentage of the team's kills they're involved in. And if you look up like top laners, they can range anywhere from like 30% all the way up to 70%, depending on how like involved their top laner is in the rest of the game. So that's very important as well when deciding who to roster from a team.
Now, do you feel like the China, like the LPL is like Chinese? Do you feel like, the stats are a little different, easier to find when you go into like the Chinese and the United States and stuff like that? Or do you feel if you listen, I've been Googling stuff. I've been finding stats without a problem. Like, do you feel like it's just you're going to find them because like this is a pro league?
You can find the stats like for almost any of the leagues. There's four major regions, and those are the ones you're going to see all the time, especially on DraftKings. They've been experimenting with adding some of the smaller ones, but North America, Europe, China, and Korea are the four major regions. The stats to find for those regions are very easy to find, but even going down to like you can find stats for the Turkish league, you can find stats for Brazil, pretty much any league. Like the stats are definitely out there if you're looking in the right places for sure.
So I, again, have been doing a lot of research, and what I'm noticing, like a lot of the good teams, their towers killed per game seem to be really high. Do you think that correlates at all, or do you think it's you're going to see more towers killed per game when they're facing weaker teams? So that's not a stat we should be like tracking too much.
Yeah, no, that's really just a function of winning. You're going to kill more towers when you win. You have to kill more towers to get to the enemy team's nexus. So if you're a team that's winning a lot, you're going to kill more towers per game. If you're a team that's losing a lot, you're not going to kill as many towers per game. I think that's pretty much just a function of how often they're winning.
Yeah, for anybody that's curious, victory 5, very very bad. Um, so you know does like time of games to accumulate more fantasy points, like is this something that we should be looking at? I don't want you to have to give away all your tricks of the trade. I appreciate you just joining and like chatting and like giving us an overview. I'm just, like I said, I'm trying to learn too. It's something that like if we had CS:GO, I would know I want to go get guys that are getting frags and assists and stuff, and their ADR is really high. But I don't have CS:GO yet. I'm waiting. Again, I don't want you to have to give away, but like when I'm looking at like teams like BG, LGD, like their game time seems to be a little bit longer than some of these other teams.
Yeah, game time's relevant. The longer the game goes, generally speaking, the better it's going to be. I mean, that's not always true, of course, but generally speaking, the longer the game goes, the better it's going to be. Keep in mind that fantasy players also get points for farm, killing the little minions that are running around the map. And the longer the game goes, they're definitely going to kill more minions. I mean, every minute they're going to keep killing more and more minions. So you're guaranteed more points just from that. And obviously, if the game's going longer, they're going to have more opportunities to skirmish and fight and get kills. Um, but looking up things like the combined kills per minute and kills per win and deaths per loss and stuff like that, I think is more relevant. There are teams that win very quickly but are extremely bloody and fight all the time. Um, there's a couple leagues that you guys aren't going to get to watch right now because they're also on hiatus. We're expecting them to come back next week, but in Europe, there's a team called G2 that's very well known. They're very, very aggressive and they fight all the time, but their game time's not very long.
Hey, I've heard of G2. Like I
There
feel
we
like
go.
there we go. All right. The question that I've seen the most in our Discord channel, our esports Discord channel is free for anybody that's part of the RotoGrinders community, and wants to talk esports. The question that I see the most. All right, John, you're probably gonna be like, all right. Everybody wants to know what the heck a creep score is.
Okay, that's what I was just talking about. Creep
The
score
minions.
is
Okay.
it's the number of minions that they've killed over the course of the game. Yeah, they get 0.02 points for every minion that they kill. 80 carries and mid laners farm by far more than everyone else. Sometimes top laners, depending on what champion they're playing as well. But junglers and supports, junglers farm a lot less, and supports don't farm at all. So that's one of the reasons that you said that supports seem like they scored lower in general. Yeah, they don't kill minions. So especially in best of 3 series, they're going to miss out on 3 to 500 minion kills every game. They might get 20 to 50 farm if nobody else is around. They'll kill minions to not waste the gold. But yeah, in general, they're not going to farm. So you're missing 3 to 500 minions a game if you're a support.
Yeah, I'm seeing like you see a lot of like stats for like gold per minute. Is that like translate into anything that we should be looking at too?
It's going to tell you how good the team is. It's going to help you figure out how good the team is or how good the player on the team is. A lot of times also there's things like gold share that you can look into that will tell you where a team allocates its gold. Like some teams play through their 80 carry and the 80 carry gets 33% of the gold on the map, which is like a huge number. Other teams play through their top laner. So that kind of stuff is important for figuring out how you want to stack a team, but not necessarily relevant in deciding which teams you want to stack, I don't think.
Listen, we're stacking. That's what we're doing. Like
We're
we're
definitely
not.
stacking.
We're stacking. Let's make that clear one more time. We're stacking. I can't really, maybe I can't really think of anything else that I've come across that I have questions. Is there anything like that you feel like I'm missing? I know, like, again, you can research per player how much they're averaging as far as like kills and stuff. Like, you know, average kills per matchup. Again, it seems like ADC and middle are your average kills per game. Like, I know Puff, I think, is leading the LPL right now. Look at me dropping names. I just saw that before we started, and that's the only reason I knew that. But for the most part, I guess like you said, it really like depends on what type of software really like leagues is on. Like, I know they started the season, it was on a different one, right? Wasn't it like 1.01 or
Yeah,
something?
the patches change throughout the
Patches. That's what
course
I
of
was
the
trying to think
season.
of.
Yeah, and things do like the meta game, as we would call it, switches around. Like imagine if every like month and a half in basketball, they're like now 3-pointers are only worth 2.2 points and layups are worth 5. Like suddenly different players would be the best player in the league and different teams would be the best
Jeez.
team in the league. If all of a sudden, they said dunks are worth 10 now. It's just like, oh, we had this center we couldn't use for the last like 2 months because 3-pointers were worth 9, but all of a sudden now dunks are worth 10, so we're the best team in the league because we got this guy. Like, it doesn't usually change quite that much. The best teams tend to stay the best teams overall, but it definitely affects how good some teams are and what they can do. Um, I'll say, like you were asking if there's anything else, I'd say in roster construction, we were talking about stacking. For many years, like really up until recently, I played 4-2 splits, as I would call it, basically every slate. 4 players from one team, 2 players from another team. Um, the team slot does not gel with the players, which we kind of discussed a little bit. Like, it doesn't matter how bloody the players are, the team slot doesn't gain anything from that. So you don't need to have a team from a matchup that you expect to be bloody. So usually I would try to identify what I thought the bloodiest matchup was going to be and play 4 players from that matchup and then 2 players from another team that I thought was going to win and then the team slot from the second team. I will say with the size of the contests that we're getting now and a lot of people understanding that 4-2 tends to be the right way to build your lineups, you have some room to throw some funky stuff in there if you want to try to solo win a GPP because there's going to be a lot of lineup sharing in the 4-2 lineup setups.
Yeah, I think that's I see this with NASCAR a lot, as far as like 5-way splits for first place. I think we're gonna see with these like top heavy payouts. I think you're gonna see a lot of ties for first place. So like $20,000 paydays are gonna be like 3 or 4 grand. Hey, listen, I'll take 3 or 4 grand. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying when I'm looking at like, again, I've played the last 3 slates for LPL, and just looking at like roster construction and stuff like that, it's almost always at least a 4-team stack taking down GPPs. So I think what you're saying makes a ton of sense. I think last night's big slate was the first one that we saw. I think it was like a 3-3-2 or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah,
It was
3-3-1.
definitely it was 3-3-1 or something, right? It was way different, as far as like roster construction. But we saw kind of an upset with OMG, which I read a lot of people were kind of expecting them to win. So
Yeah, I played all OMG last night, but yeah, I mean, like I say, I stand behind 4-2. You can't play 5 players from a team. Like DraftKings won't let you. If you could, I would play 5 players from a team. But generally speaking, I am definitely confident that 4-2 is like the most optimal way to stack things. But like you say, when you're playing a big size GPP, sometimes you need to do non-optimal things if you want to get a solo-owned lineup, especially when people are starting to figure out that they're supposed to be stacking. If there's 5,000 people only team stacking on a slate that only has 6 teams, you're going to come up with an awful lot of people copying the same lineup. So I do think there's some merit to like mixing in 3-3-1s or playing 3 different teams in your lineup and things like that to try to get solo-owned lineups.
yeah, I like the optimal approach of playing 4. But yeah, listen, like especially on like the 2-game slate that we're looking at, that's going to start here on Tuesday morning early. That's he's trying to, man. I have to go back and like watch some of these, and it's like I'm not awake at 2 o'clock in the morning. I have a 5-month-old. Like I am very well asleep. I got to watch the end of like the live game from earlier on Monday morning. That was still going on. So kind of got to take in some live action. The announcers, man, they're good. I like the announcers over there. They make it entertaining. I like it.
I think you'll enjoy, for people that have started to get into this a little bit and they've kind of enjoyed it. Wait until the North American and European leagues come back. They're thinking about trying to bring them back this weekend, and they're just going to play the games online. But the production value is extremely high. They have analyst desks in between matches, kind of like they would in like basketball. At halftime they go to Charles Barkley and the guys to talk about it. They have the same thing in league. Um, China, they have the same thing, but you're not watching that for the most part. We're mostly watching the English stream, which is not the Chinese stream. So on when the EU and NA, LCS and LEC come back this weekend, you'll get to see kind of what league really has to offer. I also recommend people, if you want to see something cool, go back and watch some clips from the World Championships the last few years. They played the World Championships in the Bird's Nest in China, completely packed, the same place they had the Olympics. It's really, really cool, and people don't realize how much like production value and how big these really are, especially in China and Korea.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah, like it's crazy to like turn on TV and like on TBS and stuff and see this stuff like pop up. It's just cool to see. It's like you can't yell at your kids for playing video games anymore. Like, where was this when I was growing up? My dad couldn't yell at me. Like, before I let you get out of here, really quick, let's talk LPL really quick. Like, is there any like shocking things that you should see or that we should be looking at as far as like standings, or do you think like E-Star and Vicious, like these teams are like the best teams that we should be looking at each and every game?
Okay, so for people that hadn't really followed league coming into this season, E-Star is a huge a huge surprise to people. The E-Star is a completely rookie organization that only joined the league this year. They have a group of players that, for the most part, have never played professionally before, and most people ranked them 17th out of 7 or 18th out of 18 in the league. So the fact that they've come out and they're starting out 5-1 is like a huge deal. I will say a lot of the analysts I've talked to think that will fall apart at some point pretty soon here. They're playing kind of a similar strategy every game, and as the other teams start catching on to what they're doing, I think that falls apart a little bit. As far as the other ones, Invictus is a world champion from 2 years ago. Their team's fantastic. They have the best top laner in the world, and they'll probably maintain being up there. Fun plus Phoenix, if you look down in 6th place. I know, what a weird name for a team, but they are our current reigning world champions, so they're also going to be very good. I would expect them to move up the leaderboard. So, yeah, I think, honestly, other than E-Star, the top, 6 teams is pretty much what everybody expected them to be coming into this season, and the bottom 5 teams is about what people expected, other than Vici Gaming. Vici was a team that was expected to be kind of good and has been pretty terrible so far. But, yeah, things are playing out sort of reasonably, other than E-Star and Vici, I would say.
I was looking at E-Star earlier too. They've had a really soft schedule here. So I feel like they could be like one of these teams that like when they start facing some better teams, they're going to get 2-0 waxed and go from like 1st to like 10th or something here, throughout this season.
Oh, yeah, I'll say start looking into some of these teams if you really want to play League this season. For the listeners, start looking into some of these teams because they play very different styles. There was a period of time for like a year where Invictus was averaging like 5 or 6 more kills or deaths every game than any other team in the entire world in any region. Like, so some of these teams are extremely bloody and have a very aggressive play style. Some of them, like Billy Gaming, are considered like much more conservative and don't die as much. You're going to figure that stuff out if you start paying attention. And for DFS, hugely important to know which teams are going to be fighting a lot. So
we want teams fighting. We
yes,
have gotten to that point of this podcast. We know League of Legends. We want fighting and blood. That
exactly
is what
you want.
that's what we want. So, John, I know you guys do a weekly podcast talking LOL, right? Esports in general. It's called the Gold Card Podcast. I'm hoping that you joining us, that everybody's going to go over to the Esports Plug on Twitter, follow you. Like I said, I really appreciate you joining us here today. Check out the podcast. I'm going to be listening. I'm going to go back and listen. I'm going to go back and listen. I'm trying to take all this information in. Not only am I bored, I'm actually really excited and intrigued by this. So, John, really appreciate any final thoughts before we get out of here.
Yeah, no, just pop over on Twitter. I love talking about League of Legends. Feel free to message me or at me. And the Gold Card Podcast it's a betting podcast, so we mostly talk about whether we like certain bets or not. But it will give you an idea of who we think is going to win every matchup, which is useful to know for daily fantasy. So, yeah, hop on over there, come say hi to me, and feel free to listen to the podcast. We appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, listen, really quick, now that you brought up betting, I found a site called esportsbet.com that seems to be, legit outside of like, Vegas sites and stuff. And like, it seems like the lines have been really good. How well do you like these lines for LOL, or is there anything like, do you take Vegas odds and be like, all right, just for instance, like the 2-game slate for Tuesday, that is probably going to be almost over by the time most people listen to this. You mentioned Fun Plus Phoenix. They're minus 1,000, going up against a team that's really close as far, like they're both 2-2. And like, I see that and I'm like, all right, these teams are both 2-2. There's something that I should be looking into this more.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think that Fun Plus is going to win that game for the record. But I mean, we have the same kind of betting as everything else. We have spread bets. There's bets on like first turret, who's going to get first blood, who's going to take first dragon. There's all different kinds of like prop bets like that as well as spreads and over-unders. So getting into league betting is definitely a big thing. I'll say the lines for betting in league are definitely softer than football, basketball, all those kinds of things. They don't have experts over there using like precise software to create near perfect lines. So if you like betting and you like money, which I think we do, league is a pretty good place to invest your money.
Well, it sounds like we're gonna make some esports E-Star money here soon, because they were big favorites a couple days ago, right? And they lost. So looks like we're gonna make us some money here, betting some esports as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's there's good money to be made, and I recommend people stick around and see if they can beat some softer lines.
Listen, I'm excited. I hope the United States gets going again. Like, let these guys play online. I know lag's an issue and everybody wants to have the same ping, but this is your time. There's nothing else going on. Like, right now is your time to just take advantage of this and, like, take advantage of a bad circumstance and, like, make the best out of it for your esports. Like, this is the time. Like, I know everybody wants that 0 ping and all be on the level playing field, but, like, play with 20 ping and just do the best you can. Like, I'm sure you're with me on this. But John George, the esports plug over there on Twitter, make sure you guys are checking him out. Like he said, the Gold Card podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Check that out if you're wanting some esports betting advice and tips. Let's gonna wrap it up here for Tuesday. We'll be back Wednesday talking something. Don't know what yet. Maybe esports, maybe MMA, maybe something. But we'll be back Wednesday. Appreciate you guys listening. Good luck, and we'll see you then.